Companions, the bane of my freaking existence. Luris the Dream Den is indeed my sleep paralysis demon, and Mark Rosewater is his father. No cap. Welcome to another episode where I personally might suffer an aneurysm because companions are worse than heart disease. I apologize to anyone with heart disease. All that and more, you're listening to the CardMisers podcast.
That's Cap, and with that, welcome back. Today, despite the gloomy intro, we are intoxicated with exuberance to discuss the new companion mechanic and the possibilities it brings when including them in a cube or designing a cube around them specifically. We've done some serious brain work with our thinking caps, so let's jump on in.
Amen. Although this subject brings me acute pain in the left amygdala, I am willing to brave the wilds and discuss the most revolting mechanic since sliced bread.
I think we can agree, Travis, that perhaps you're being a bit melodramatic.
I simply have strong feelings about companions. Or at least I did. I feel nothing now. Not anymore.
All right, Bruce Wayne. Anyways,
What?
let us move into this.
What is your deal with
Let's move on to this discussion today, which will be spearheaded by the topic of including companions into your cubes and how you should go about doing that correctly.
Correctly means burning your house down with the companions locked inside. I can't feel pain.
Jesus, bro, let's stay on topic. But you do make a good point. If you're going to burn the companions, you have to burn every single copy of them ever printed. Every copy that ever touched a particle of air, not just the ones we're putting in our cube.
No cap. All right. That's going to be a theme for today, talking about no caps. All right. Now let's talk about including companions in your cube, which is something you shouldn't do.
But if you were to, which companions are even good, Travis?
Well, that's a trick question, because they are all evil and will attack like beasts and gnaw at your soul and your flesh until it's gone.
Seriously, though, not all of the companions have as good or relevant effects as the others.
Yeah, for example, Luris the Dream Den is an insane companion for any low-to-the-ground aggressive deck or sacrifice deck that plays non-permanents above 2 mana.
Right. Heck, even a spell-slinging deck that plays almost no permanents would be great with this as the companion.
Yorion's Sky Nomad, however, has a restriction that is almost impossible to build around in many cubes. Adding an extra 10 to 15 playables in a draft deck is really hard, especially in older formats like Legacy and Vintage, where you cannot afford to dilute your powerful threats.
That's right. Having the probability of drawing your power 9 or huge bombs drop by a considerable margin is really bad in the cube format where every card matters. So guys, what we're trying to say is, don't just throw every companion into cube simply because they're good cards and broken and constructed.
Speaking of broken, so were my dreams when they were spoiled. I felt my soul leave my body completely, and I haven't been the same since.
Is that Cap? Yeah. All right, so here's a list of what we believe to be the better companions and where they should be used. So first off, we have Luris the Dream Den.
We already talked about this dude's strengths. Let's move on.
All right, you're right. Let's move on to something more exciting, which is Zirda the Dawnwalker.
So this companion is sometimes really hard to pull off in a cube where Blink is an archetype, and the reason is you frequently find that there just aren't enough activated abilities.
Yeah, that's right. And this is just an example of one of those things you really have to think about before you include a companion.
However, in Vintage or Legacy Cube, this card goes really well in artifact strategies where you have things like the Signets, Metalworker, Planeswalkers, Basalt or Grim Monolith, and plenty more activated abilities aside. All of that may not synergize with Zirda exactly, but they allow her to be in the companion zone, which is why companions are busted in the first place.
Exactly. Much of the examples we give will simply allow the companion to be played from the sideboard, not necessarily be the most synergistic deck.
I might add that any cube with a big cycling theme can use her to great effect, as cycling is an activated ability.
That's right. Cycling counts as an activated ability, and sometimes making the cycling cost as cheap as 1 is just straight up good.
Yeah, no, that is really insane. Next is Obosh the Prey Piercer, and this card is insane for aggro strategies. Any cube with a decent curve in its colors can play this easily with the deck restriction.
Absolutely. The main thing you're sacrificing with this card is the 2-drop slot in decks. Traditionally, playing a 2-drop is extremely critical in any format. but this card creates an exception to that rule by having such a board-busting effect when it's on the battlefield.
Right. Now make sure your cubes curve well, otherwise Obosh might have a hard time finding odd converted mana cost cards. Or, you may end up overloading on 5-drops in the deck, and that is never good, because 5-drops are usually the curve toppers in these colors, and sometimes you may just only get those in a draft when you're drafting the odd converted mana cost. So watch out for that and make sure that curve is really good.
Yeah, and we know that those 5-drops are really attractive. Believe me, I've drafted a deck with most likely about 8 5-drops in cube, and yeah, it's super fun, but you just lose. So moving on, we have Kahira, the Orphan Guard.
Right, so tribal cubes are the home for this card. Too often, the creature type of cube cards is centered really around the handful of major consistent types in Magic, and playing this in the companion slot in cubes like Modern or Legacy or Vintage can be really difficult.
Yeah, when you think about the creature types you see in traditional cubes like Vintage, they aren't very exotic with few exceptions.
Yeah, something like Hypnotic Spectre or Flametongue Kavu are about as interesting as the creatures can get. I mean, you won't have an abundance of elementals or nightmares or cats or what have you in the cube, so.
Yeah. A point that I believe should be mentioned is that in a creatureless deck, something that easily can be put together in Vintage and is sometimes a very potent deck, you'll want to put this card in the companion slot if you draft it simply just because you can.
That's actually really true. Having an additional card in your hand every game is such a powerful effect that I believe it was Saffron Olive that speculated that were you allowed to have any number of different companions in the companion slot, it may be correct to simply play a deck of 60 lands and then have every companion in the sideboard, giving you essentially 17 cards in hand at the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your outlook, that is not a rule, so you can't actually do that.
Thank God. Yeah. That tangent was meant to illustrate how even zero synergy between a deck and a companion doesn't mean that companion shouldn't be played. I'd run Lurrus in a deck with almost 0 non-land permanents just for the free card.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it's just a free roll. So next we have Lutri, the Spell Chaser, and this companion is hands down the best companion for the cube format.
As a rule, cubes are singleton formats like Commander.
And as an aside, obviously, cubes are your own constructed universe, and you can do really whatever you want.
In Vintage, this card bangs. It was always a childhood dream of mine to cast more than one Ancestral Recall in a game of Vintage, and Lutri the Spell Chaser makes that happen with ease.
That sounds like such a tasty play, dude. Like, let's play Vintage Cube after this, actually. Shall we?
Yeah, but you're going to be the one playing blue in Ancestral Recall. But you know what? It sounds good. Let's get on with this breakdown.
So what makes Lutri so amazing is that the companion requirement will be successfully met every single draft, no matter what.
Yeah, on top of that, dual casting instants and sorceries, especially in Elder formats, where the most powerful and efficient versions of their effects are played, this companion gets just ridiculous.
Yeah. So personally, when a card is so perfectly suited for a format like Lutri is for Cube, and is also so much better in that format than similar cards, i.e. every other companion, whether that card should be allowed is a decision that should be considered. Maybe it's right to ban Lutri for Cube. All I'm saying.
Yeah, I just realized that with Reanimator, Lutri just makes that deck even better too. So it's really gross. Yeah, imagine reanimating 2 things for 4 mana. Yeah, gross. All right, we'll have to playtest with this in the Cube format before we can make any definite assertions to the brokenness of this companion in Cube. But make sure that you take balance into consideration when including it, or at least snap it off Windmill Slam when drafting and you see it in a pack.
Yep, Lutri has the potential to be the best card for Cube universally in terms of power, so be wary. I mean, better than any other card in Cube at all, even Black Lotus. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think for right now.
Moving on, we have Gigantha the Wellspring, and this card is the second easiest companion requirement to meet.
That's right. Oftentimes, and we're going to sound like a broken record here, in Elder formats where the best versions of every effect are played, cards rarely have duplicate mana pips in their cost. So those are the Wooburg symbols and the mana cost of a card. And in Vintage and Legacy, you won't see as many of those.
Yeah, so having a 5-mana 5/5 that ramps by 5 and is available every game, it only prevents you from playing cards like Cradlehoof Behemoth, Mana Drain, and Ilk. That's just a deal.
Yeah, I feel like we're in danger of just being a card review here by just talking about how good these are in general, but the playability of this card changes very little from format to format.
Exactly. The reason why this card is really powerful is because it's consistent across formats, if you catch my meaning.
Yeah, it's just as good in any constructed format as it is in the Cube format. And so that goes to show that's super powerful. So in Cube, this card is really easy to draft around. It doesn't exactly facilitate any particular strategy. I mean, like ramp, I guess, a little bit. But really, it just exists and is a big creature to get every game.
If we had to say some negatives about this companion, I suppose that Commander and Modern cubes could have a harder time playing this card, simply because for Modern, the card pool is smaller and thus is statistically more likely that certain effects would have duplicate pips. And secondly, some of the most powerful cards in the format, think Jace, the Mind Sculptor, and Liliana of the Veil, or Craterhoof again, or Urza, Supreme Artificer, are all duplicate pips.
Right, and in Commander cubes, many commanders, or dual-color commanders at least, have duplicate pips. Plus, the really splashy monocolored effects have duplicate pips in the mana cost as well.
Yeah, exactly. Think Zendikar Resurgent, Expropriate, Sun Titan, Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, etc.
Yeah. Next, we have Umori the Collector, and this card is pretty easy to build towards the companion mechanic in every cube format that I can think of.
The Collector of Souls. Yeah. While your deck won't be the most competitive, playing only a certain card type, oftentimes you can secure enough playables of that type.
Right. I'd be inclined to say that this is harder for a Commander cube, where the decks are frequently much larger than 40 cards, and thus you need to get more playables of that card type, which is just, again, statistically less likely to happen. But in Vintage, with a creature complete mid-range deck or an artifact-only deck, you can pull this off.
Which is, if you haven't understood already, the whole entire point of playing these cards. Cube is a very powerful format. There are no miscellaneous commons and uncommons like in Booster Draft, where most rares are just straight up bombs.
Yeah. In Cube, every card is a bomb, and thus, just trying to play a 4-mana 4/5 that ramps you a little in the main deck is not something you want to be doing, unless, of course, the rest of the cube is on that power level, and you're playing like Pauper. Freaking Pauper.
But we're playing Vintage here, so...
No, we're just playing anything that's not Pauper.
We're actually playing Companions, and that's why our house is trenched in gasoline right now, but...
What? This isn't our house. We're at my house. Bro, stop. We don't live together. Not anymore.
That's right. It's just your house that's covered in gasoline. My house is fine.
Continue.
That about does it for the most competitive or playable companions to include in Cube. Remember that at the time of this episode, the rules change to the companion mechanic is in effect, and you must pay a generic 3 mana to place the companion from the sideboard into your hand.
Thus, in this list of companions you may want to include in your cubes, we didn't include cards like Gyruda, Doom of Depths, Yorion, Sky Nomad, or Karuga, the I Now Suck Sage, because their requirements are extremely steep for their effects with an additional 3 mana tacked onto them. Putting them at like 8 mana and above, that just makes them poor cards for any established cube format. Like, I would not dare play Gyruda in my Vintage cube, because by the time I get to 9 mana, I'm dead. Every time. But if actually, just thinking about it, having a companion in Vintage Cube would make me die every time. I'm so sad. So very cold and alone.
Oh my god. Well, you can't die right now. At least wait till the end of the episode, because we're getting to the best part.
You can't die if you haven't liked and subscribed.
Exactly. So the best part of this episode is we're going to talk about building a cube format around the 10 companions. So guys, this is a very difficult thing to try and encapsulate in one episode, but we're going to do our best to make a rough guideline.
Attempting this abomination, you mean?
Dude, chill with the hate and offer something useful to the conversation here. Like a nice glass of slurp.
I feel like we should have included a disclaimer, though, that says don't try this at home, because you shouldn't. Never try this. Never even attempt this.
Yeah, if you try this at home, you're going to end up like Travis with his house covered in gasoline. You don't want that for your
Dude,
house.
stop talking about my house being covered in gasoline. It's not. People are going to get concerned and call the police. That's the last thing we need.
It just smells really bad in here.
Excuse me? You're totally making that up. You're just doing that.
No,
Stop.
It smells bad because of the gasoline.
First things first is finding a way to put all of the companions on roughly the same power level. That is the big catch here.
Yeah, this may mean doing away with the new companion tax rule. Making the expensive companions cost much less is far better for them than making the cheaper companions cost less.
Right, and here's our tier list for companions by power level, in our opinion. So we have Lutri the Spellchaser in first, Lurrus the Dream Den in second, Giganta the Wellspring in third, Obosh the Prey Piercer in fourth, in fifth is Umori the Collector. Next we have Gyruda Doom of Depths, Kira the Orphan Guard, Zerda the Dawnwalker, Karuga the Macro Sage, and Yorion the Sky Nomad. In dead last because he sucks.
Yeah, there's some flex spots in here. I'm not convinced that Gyruda, Zerda, and Umori can't be flopped around a little bit.
Purely looking at this list, it is now tangible how to balance these, I hope, if you're a clever person.
Like us. Yeah. So, Get like us, guys.
Shut up.
Yorion Sky Nomad is far underpowered compared to Lutri the Spell Chaser, just generically. So, when constructing your cube, you have to support Yorion with better effects than Lutri or make them more powerful in some regard in order to keep them on a level playing field.
Right. Now this, of course, gets at the main cardinal tenet of cube construction, which is balance. The force flows through all things. You must bring balance to the force. We can, however, take educated guesses at which companions are better than others and how to support certain companions best in a cube. But at the end of the day, the real decisions and construction comes from you and what you want your cubes to look like, and hopefully not like this.
This is why cube is just the best, guys. Just the best, straight up. So what we're going to do is provide a cube construction outline for a particular cube that Travis and I thought of, where you build the archetypes of the cube around 5 of the companions while structuring the cards you include around the 5 other companions. Obviously, the cards you include are going to take into account the kind of cards you need to balance each companion.
So what we decided was that the 5 worst companions would be built around in order to increase their relative power due to the fact that you're deliberately supporting them. Meanwhile, the other 5 can be supported passively by including cards that hit their companion requirement. This may seem like a lot, so we're going to break it down for you in an easier way so you can build this cube in a straightforward manner if you're interested.
I will say, I think this cube design is one of the more interesting builds I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's kind of arrogant, bro. You need to chill.
Is it bad to be proud of our work?
Yeah, but if you're too proud, people aren't going to like it.
Okay, fine. This design sucks. Don't build it.
You didn't have to do... Okay, never mind. It does suck, but forget it. Let's move on to the 5 build-around companions.
So the build-around companions are going to be Yorion, Sky Nomad, Karuga, the Macro Sage, Zerda, the Dawnwalker, Kahira, the Orphan Guard, and Gyruda, Doom of Depths.
Karuga, the macros suck! So the archetypes are, per companion, in blue and white, you have Blink and Enter the Battlefield effects. So Yorion is absolute cancer to put into the companion slot because cubes want you to play exactly 40 cards more than any other draft format. So this companion will need the most help to be as powerful as the others. I might add that it is just companions are cancer normally, but this is more cancer because it sucks.
Yeah, this card just puts you basically just at a disadvantage compared to everyone else in terms of drafting. So make sure that the ETB effects of cards in your cube are really powerful, especially when repeatable, such as Agent of Treachery.
Oh, that card makes me cry too.
I don't like it either, but it is necessary in something like this. Also, remember that the companions can be one of the 2 colors they represent and can be in many different color of decks. So, for example, you can cast Yorion in Dimir decks because of the mana cost. You don't have to pay white.
Yeah, it's a hybrid of whatever mana colors it's in. So in blue-green, we have ramp, value cards, split cards, suspend cards, or other mana cheating cards. And a quick note about these, including split cards, specifically with spells in the 1 and 2 drop slot, are important with Karuga so that you don't miss playing on turn 1 and turn 2. Karuga's greatest weakness is being too far behind in a game before making any impactful plays.
Right, so other cards will maybe cost 3 or 4 mana, but have other abilities like revealing cards that cheapen mana costs, or delve, or evoke, etc.
Yeah, so be a clever boy or girl and find ways to get around the companion restriction and cast 2-drops. My favorite trick is turn 2 Discovery of the Discovery Dispersal split card.
Yeah, bro. Also, more my jam, which is Cut to Ribbons and Find Finality, are 2 other great effects that bypass the deck restriction. Also, Find returns Karuga to your hand if it gets killed, so that card's probably just an auto-include in this cube.
Yeah, there you go. We have 1 card for you out of like the 300 and something. Include Find Finality. Next, we have red-white, which is Artifacts, Matter/Combo. What you're trying to do here is to include artifacts and artifacts matter cards with activated abilities of colorless mana to be reduced in cost. So something like Basalt Monolith and Walking Ballista, or Planeswalkers / the Chain Veil are other interesting directions to take this deck. What you need to be doing with the Artifacts Matter strategy is creating really powerful combos, especially infinite mana ones, with the ability cost reduction. So for example, Basalt Monolith, it's taps for 3 mana and then costs 3 mana to untap it. So with Zerda on the battlefield, you can tap it for 3 mana and it only costs 1 generic mana to untap. So obviously you have an infinite mana loop here, and that is super powerful. And it doesn't hurt to include like the signets in this cube to allow for a few extra mana ramp playables. And I think of all of these build-arounds, this one will be the most exciting, just trying to get all of those really synergistic cost reductions. Paying 2 mana to put a counter on Walking Ballista is just so powerful. Like, that is huge. That is just awesome.
Also activating the Chain Veil for 2 mana instead of 4.
Oh, God.
That's so disgusting.
Zerda, the new face of Super Friends. I wonder.
Oh, yeah. And plus, most of these cards, you're going to probably see them in most other cubes, too. So might as well just put them in here. They help out a strategy, and, they're just good. So let's move on.
Next, we have green-white with Miscellaneous Tribal. So, interestingly, the Kahira build-around is as simple as revising cube cards to have the keyword card types in them. For example, let's say you have a 2-mana, 1-white, 1/1 creature with double strike, and I think it's called like Fencing Ace or something from Innistrad. Now what you want to do is actually switch that card for something like an Adorn Pouncer, which fits the creature type restriction as it is a cat. So you're looking to replace, those sorts of effects with effects of the creature type.
Yep. Other synergy cards include many of the Garruk Planeswalkers, which create beasts and are complicit in the companion restriction. And plus, those Planeswalkers are already just good anyway, so throw them in here, help out your strategy.
Yep. So essentially, to build around Kahira, replace as many effects as possible in your cube with creatures that fit the creature type of like Elemental, Nightmare, Cat, etc., Beast, you know what. So, for example, Mold Drifter is an Elemental and also a great ETB effect for Yorion. So it's like literally the perfect card. So you're welcome. That's the second card for you. We have 2 out of 360 or something like that.
Right. Play Mold Drifter. It's fun. Also, something I do want to add is that since the companion rule change, Kahira is going to play much like an overrun effect for turn 6. You want to curve out with beasts, etc., and slam the Orphan God on turn 6 and turn everything sideways. So put a lot of emphasis on the curve of these particular creatures.
Yep. Finally, we have Gyruda, Doom of Depths, and just like Hera, the build-around for this companion is rather straightforward, prioritizing even converted mana cost creatures in the non-aggressive colors of green, blue, and black, also known as Sultai, is the way to go.
If you guys can remember what we talked about in some of our earlier episodes, the key to a successful cube is maximizing support for many strategies with as few cards as possible. So, if you include some really nice, even-costed ETB creatures in the colors we just mentioned, you're supporting Yorion, Karuga, and Gyruda all at once. Slam dunk.
Right. I will add that the clone effects, like Spark Double or Vizier of Many Faces or Evil Twin, all of those cards are even converted mana cost and have great ETB effects and are just really good value. So look into putting those in the Gyruda deck, and maybe, who knows, maybe you can build the combo Gyruda deck that you see in Standard and just copy Gyruda over and over again and mill everybody out.
So as a final point for Gyruda, you may be wondering why we're telling you to build around even CMC instead of odd CMC like Obosh. So even though the restrictions are comparable, the reason for this is because while their companion restrictions are much alike, their effects in-game and on the board are not.
Exactly. While you do want to build around Obosh by making sure to include odd converted mana cost cards in the aggro colors of Mardu, his doubling damage effect is naturally game-ending and powerful, whereas 9 mana for Gyruda is less insane as a late drop. You feel me?
I think they'd rather not feel you. Let's move on here.
Okay, that was unnecessary. Now that we've discussed what you're going to want to be doing with these 5 build-around companions, let's talk briefly about the other 5, the good 5, the good fellas.
That good. So starting with Obosh, since we already discussed him like a moment ago, make sure your aggro creatures in Mardu colors are odd converted mana cost. That's about it. Aggro is good in every format other than Commander and doesn't need much help. Also, you'll have a lot of aggressive creatures in the 1 mana drop slot just because you want to be playing some creatures on turn 1 because it's going to help out your aggressive strategy, and that will just help Obosh automatically.
Include lots of 1-drops because they're also very good with Lurrus the Dream Den. So next we have Lutri, and do I even have to say anything here? Like, include instants and sorceries in the Grixis colors. That's all. Have a good day. Go home. Bury Lutri deep in the sand.
Amen. Adventure in gasoline, just like your house.
Dude, stop. It's not even funny.
Next up, with Umori, the Bone Collector, the Collector of Souls, your cube is going to be really heavy with creatures in the first place because of Yorion, Karuga, Obosh, and Gyruda, so Umori will always be able to be built around creatures. Artifacts may also be an option because of Zerda, and if you have 60 or so artifacts in the cube in the first place.
Yeah, And if you include lots of mana-fixing creatures in green, Umori has the potential to be the second of the potential 5-color companion decks. Second, only to
Gigantha the Wellspring, of course. You literally don't have to do anything really with this companion. Cut down on the number of cards with double pips of the same kind. If there are effects that you don't want the Gigantha deck to be able to play, simply replace them with versions with double pips. So, for example, counterspells of any sort, just play Disallow and Counterspell over Mana Leak and Convolute, so Gigantha can't take advantage of those counterspells.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like putting a what are those things that they use to keep like babies out of cabinets? It's like putting those on a certain effect where you just make it double pipped and now Gigantha can't touch it.
You mean locks?
Yeah, like I know that, but they're like little like plastic. Oh, forget it. All right, let's talk about Lurrus the Dream Den. You take this one, Jake, because I literally can't actually talk about it anymore. I just hate discussing it. Oh, it's killing me.
Right on, brother. Take a break mentally. So, first things first. You only need to build around this companion very slightly. It is most likely going to be an aggro deck 80% of the time, so prioritize 1-drops, like we said already before, and 2-drops in the Maru colors. So basically do what you're already going to do, and make sure you put those 2-drops in as well. Also, a few key cards with powerful sacrifice energy would be really good, too, for this deck. The kind of cards that few other decks would like to play. So, like, dude, Lurrus is just like a Cat Evan combo, just Lurrus something combo, you know? Just
if you put all right, I'm gonna take over here. If you put the Cat Oven combo in this companion cube, I will write to your mother, and I can think of no stronger threat than that. Unless you're an orphan, in which case I will write to Kahira, and she will spank you.
the Orphan God.
You know, I was actually just thinking. Do you think that like Kahira gives +1/+1 to vigilance to like Batman and Harry Potter? Because they're orphans. Oh, gosh, that's horrible. Batman gets vigilance when Kahira's in the battlefield.
Yeah, he
is an orphan. He has no parents.
Yes.
Also, forgive us if there are any orphans in the crowd. We do not know what it's like, and we are very privileged to not have Kahira as our companion. All right, that's all the advice we have for building this particular cube around the companion mechanics. Personally, I find this very exciting, and I can't wait to try it myself.
Control yourself, Travis. We can't build every single cube we think of or make breakdowns for.
Yeah, I was actually just like lying. I don't actually want to build this. I think I've made it very clear that this is cancer.
Yeah.
With all of that on the stack, sorry, we're gonna say something.
I think if you ever saw a Lurrus, in person, like a paper copy, we'd probably just like rip it in half, light it on fire right away.
If I saw Lurrus in person, I'd rip him in half and light him on fire right away.
Nah, dude, he's gonna slip into the shadows and cut your throat.
He doesn't have hands. All right.
With his blades.
He doesn't have... Okay. With all that on the stack, feel free to leave any response in the comment section at all. If you hate companions like I do, or love them and hate me, that's fine. I guess you could tell us that if you really hate us. I don't know. But let us know what you think. And if you want to see more episodes like this is our first in-depth cube deep dive built around a mechanic. And I don't know. I mean, like, let us know if we hit it out of the park. I think we hit it out of the park. I may hate what we did, but I think we did a good job. You know?
Yeah. Also, guys, if you are so inclined to make this companion cube, don't hesitate to send us your lists in the comment section. That would be awesome because we want to see what you guys come up with and if we miss anything, So, plus, it's just really fun. So, send us those lists. Put them in the comment section. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I feel like J. Robert Oppenheimer, the dude who helped create the atomic bomb, where he's just created something so wonderfully destructive, but he hates it so much. That's what I am right now. I've created a monster. I am the scientist from Frankenstein. I've created Frankenstein. I've created a monster.
So, like Stitchwing Scab?
That's not any... Okay, let's move on to the end step and deliver the Wayne quote of the week, because I'm not going to dignify what Jake just said with a response. And we know that this is your favorite part, so let's go.
Your Wayne quote of the week. Quote, real G's move in silence like lasagna. End quote.
All right, that's the end of the podcast. We're out.
Until next time, Miser Gang.
My house will not burn down, don't worry. Peace.